What should art actually be? Should it capture reality exactly as it is? Should it focus more on emotions? Or should it be so sharp looks like a photograph? I think that's such an interesting question because artists have been debating it for centuries. And depending on who you ask, the answer looks completely different. Some painters dedicated their whole lives to show the world exactly as it is. Others, though, no, art should be about how we feel inside. And then, of course, some took it to extreme, making paintings so detailed that could easily be mistaken for photos. In this video, we're going to explore 4 of these approaches: Impressionism, Expressionism, Realism, and Photorealism. Each one has its own story, its own reason for existence, and honestly, each one changes the way we think about what art even is. So let's start with Impressionism, a movement that really shook things up. A group of painters who went outside with their easels and tried to capture something impossible, the movement of light itself. The funny thing is the name actually began as an insult. There was a French painter, Claude Monet, who showed his work called Impression Sunrise. Critics looked at it and basically said, "This isn't a painting, it's just an impression of one." They meant it as an insult, but the artist actually loved it, and the name stuck. Now let's travel back in time in the mid-18th century. If you wanted to become a successful painter in France, you had to go through the Académie des Beaux-Arts, which basically means the Academy of Fine Arts. They were the art police and they would run the biggest exhibitions every year. Well, the Academy also had quite a bit of strict rules too, which were the paintings should look polished, realistic, and ideally show something noble, like history, religion, or mythology. So imagine a gallery full of polished portraits of kings, Roman gods, and battles. That was good art. But a group of younger painters thought, why? Why not paint the world around us? People in cafes, sunset, flowers, dancers, friends in gardens. They wanted to paint the little moments of life that actually felt real. So they started painting outside, which was pretty radical at that time. They used plein air painting, literally setting up their easels outdoors to catch the natural light as it shifted. And because light changes quickly, they had to paint fast, with visible brush strokes, lighter colors, instead of perfectly blending everything, and they left the strokes as they were, which gave their canvas this shimmering and finished look. In Impressionism, painters used oil paints but in a different way. The painters worked fast and often outside, so their color palettes were brighter, lighter, and less mixing of colors. The first big names that you'll hear when it comes to Impressionism are Claude Monet, which I've mentioned him before, famous for his water lilies and gardens, and next up, Pierre-Auguste Renoir. Well, because I can't pronounce his name, I'll give you guys a fact about him. He has got 1,525 artworks. He loved painting social scenes and portraits that glow with warmth. And lastly, Edgar Degas, who was obsessed with dancers and movement. Each of them had their own focus, but all of them wanted to show life as it was unfolding, not as some academic rulebook said it should be. Well, of course, at first public hated it. Critics said it looked messy, lazy, like a child's sketch. Some even said paintings hurt their eyes because they weren't blended properly. But slowly people began to realize something. These paintings actually felt alive. A sunset looked like it was glowing. A dance scene looked like it was moving. You could almost hear the music, smell the flowers, or feel the morning air. That's the heart of Impressionism. It's not about copying every detail. It's about catching that impression of a moment, the atmosphere, the light, the mood. If you look closely, you'll see the key features that make it work: visible brush strokes that gave surface texture, outdoor scenes where natural light constantly shifts, and a palette of bright pastel colors, no heavy blacks, as if the artist was racing against time. And here's the cool part: Impressionism never really disappears. Its DNA lives everywhere, in photography, in film, even in the way we use Instagram. Think about it, when you snap a quick photo of sunlight through a tree or the glow of a city at night, you're doing the same thing as these painters did 150 years ago, trying to hold onto a fleeting impression before it slips away. So right after Impressionism came something that almost flipped the whole idea on its head: Expressionism. The name itself kind of gives it away. It's about expression. Where Impressionists were chasing the outer world, a light, color, fleeting moment, the Expressionists turned inward. They wanted to paint what it feels like to be a human, not what the eye sees, but what the heart or even the subconscious feels. Back to history, this time we're traveling in the early 19th century in Germany and parts of Northern Europe. The world was changing fast: industrialization, crowded cities, new technology, and just beneath the surface, this rising sense of anxiety leading up to World War I. People were unsettled, and Expressionist painters reflected the unease instead of soft brushstrokes and glowing light. Expressionists threw in bold color, jagged shape, and heavy outlines. They exaggerated reality, twisted it, distorted, until the canvas looked more like a raw scream than a peaceful landscape. And speaking of screams, probably the most famous expressionist work of all time, Edward Monet's The Scream. That face, the swirling sky, it looks less like a picture of a person and more a picture of a panic itself. With Expressionism, they have used oil paints back in the days because the trick here was bold colors and thick texture strokes, basically painting emotions, not reality. Colors were often intense, clashing, or symbolic rather than realistic, so paint that allowed vibrant pigments to shine was the key. Some important names when it comes to Expressionism are Ernst Ludwig Kirchner, who painted these intense angular city scenes full of tension, and Vasily Kandinsky, who actually pushed Expressionism into abstraction. He believed color and shape could directly express emotion, almost like music for the eyes. Now, to really get Expressionism, it helps to compare it with Impressionism. Imagine putting two painters standing side by side in front of the same sunset. The Impressionist is trying to capture the light, how it flickers, how the sky changes color, how the water reflects it. The Expressionist, on the other hand, is less concerned with the actual look of the sunset and more with how it feels to stand here. Maybe the sky is painted in fiery reds and blacks, brushstrokes are restless. It won't look like a picture of a nature anymore. It's a picture of the artist's inner world. That's why Expressionism resonated and still does. It's raw, it's dramatic, it's messy in the best way. It speaks to something deeply human. By the way, the fact that emotions don't look tidy or realistic but distorted and intense actually freaks me out. Basically, anytime you see an art that looks like it's shouting at you or bleeding raw emotion, you're seeing a little bit of Expressionism at work. Next up is Realism. The name says it all. These artists wanted to show life exactly as it is, no sugarcoating, no exaggerating, no dreamy brushstrokes, just the world raw and honest. So why is it called realism? Well, because that's exactly what it tried to do. Paint reality. And not just some idealized version of reality, like a perfect princess in a castle or heroic battle scene. Realist painters wanted to show ordinary people doing ordinary things: farmers working in the field, laborers at the market, a quiet family dinner. Historically, this all happened in mid-18th century in France as a reaction against Romanticism, which tended to exaggerate emotion and drama. Realist artists were like, hey, life is hard enough, can we just paint it as it is? But of course, painting life exactly as it appears is way harder than it sounds. Some of these artists would spend weeks, even months on a single painting. Gustave Courbet, one of the pioneers that would obsess over every texture, like the dirt on the farmer's boots, the way light hit the stone wall, the wrinkles in someone's shirt. Another famous painter, Jean-Francois Millet, painted small ordinary farmers in the fields with such a meticulous detail that you could particularly feel the soil on your hand. Just kidding. And Ilya Repin in Russia, he painted crowds of people with so much precision. Some key features from realism: natural colors, careful detail, and a focus on the ordinary. These artists weren't interested in fantasy or exaggeration. They wanted it to look like life, which meant every shadow, fold, and texture had to be painstakingly observed. And yes, these type of paintings could take weeks and months, because Courbet didn't finish his paintings in a single hour. For realism, artists mostly used oil paints, and for good reasons. Oil lets you build layers, blend smoothly, and get those little tiny details that make everything look real. Honestly, realist painters like Courbet and Repin could layer glaze and build up texture over weeks or months, which is essential for creating lifelike skin, fabric, and surface. Their art was powerful because it gave people a window into lives they might never have seen. Otherwise, it was honest, relatable, and even a little humbling. People love realism because it feels truthful. There's no pretending, no hiding flaw. You can look at a realist painting and step into it, feel the breeze, notice the texture, and understand the moment in a way that's both historical and very human. And this approach has not gone away. Documentary, photography, and journalism all borrow from this idea. Show life as it really is, let the viewer entrusted, and trust the reality is powerful enough on its own. Realism reminds us that you don't need glamour or drama to tell a story. Sometimes the ordinary is extraordinary. And let's be honest, trying to paint that much detail in real life? Yeah, I'll be napping halfway through, no shame at all. Finally, we have arrived at photorealism, the style that takes realism and basically says, "Hold my camera." The name is pretty straightforward. These artists wanted their paintings to look exactly like high-resolution photographs. If you squint sometimes, you can't really tell if it's a printed out photo or if it's painted. But why did it appear? Photorealism emerged in late 1960s and 70s in the US, right when photography had become widespread and super accessible. Cameras were everywhere, and suddenly artists were asking, if photograph can capture reality so precisely, what role does painting play? And because of that, some artists decided to let's take painting to extreme and see if we can trick the eye. The approach here is all about precision and technical mastery. Every detail matters: reflection on the window, the texture of a human eye, even tiny imperfections in skin or metal. The goal isn't just to replicate reality, it's to push it to a level of perfection that feels almost surreal. And yes, this could take weeks or months or even more. Artists used oil or acrylics, carefully layering every detail to mimic reality. They often used photographs, sometimes grids, to get everything just right. Now, when it comes to photorealism, some names that pop up at the top would be Chuck Close, famous for his gigantic detailed portraits; Richard Estes, who painted cityscapes with reflective windows so crisp they look like a photo you could walk into; and lastly, Audrey Flack, whose still lifes combine everyday objects with stunning realism, catching every highlight and shadow, sometimes using grids, projection, or even photographs as reference to capture every tiny detail. People love photorealism because it's astonishing. It makes you question what's real and what's painted. You look at a painting and think, wait, is that a photo? There is a little thrill in being fooled and realizing just how much skill it takes to recreate reality with nothing but paint and brush strokes. And the influence of photorealism isn't stuck in the past. Today you can see it everywhere. The hyper-realistic digital arts, that's photorealism. But that's what makes it so impressive and why we can't stop staring at it. Looking back at these four styles, it's kind of like you're having a conversation across time. Realism is all about showing life exactly as it is. Impressionism takes the same life and captures it through light and fleeting moments. Expressionism isn't concerned with reality at all. It's about emotions, inner world of the artist. And then photorealism pushes back the reality again, but sharper than the eye could ever see. Each one asks a different question about what art can do, and each one gives us a new way to experience the world through a painting. Thanks so much for watching and exploring these styles with me. It really means a lot. And if you enjoyed this video, next time we'll dive deeper into how art broke into shapes, speed, and pure abstraction. Trust me, it's going to be fun, surprising, and maybe a little mind-bending. And they had and Jean Millet. Jean. And if you enjoyed this video, next time we'll dive deeper. Fuck.